ILC Daily Show. My name is Martin Murphy.
Ce sont des données particulières.
So welcome to the second day of the International Labour Conference and the second day of the International Labour Conference Daily Show. As you can see, French President Emmanuel Macron is still addressing the plenary. He's about to finish. That marks the last speech of the morning session of the second day of the high-level visits. So today we're going to bring you some images of what happened earlier today and also in the afternoon yesterday. We will also be showing you some interviews that we've done. We're going to be talking about the future of work, of course, one of the key issues in this conference. We're going to be talking also about the ILO history, and we're going to bring you some videos about some of the ILO projects around the world, as well as some of the voices of delegates that are participating in this conference. As always, we'll be live on the ILC website. We're also live on Facebook. If you want to reach us, if you want to send any questions or any comments, please send them via Twitter using the hashtag ILO100 or OIT100. So let's get on with the show, and the first thing we're going to do, Salwa, is we're going to talk a little bit about what happened earlier today and yesterday.
That's right. Well, it's day two, the middle of day two of this very eventful International Labour Conference, the centenary session. We have had a large number of heads of state and heads of government arrive and address delegates at the plenary. Just a reminder that yesterday afternoon we've had visits from the presidents of Italy, Ghana, and South Africa, also from the prime ministers of Norway, Nepal, and Sweden, the vice president of Côte d'Ivoire, and the chief of the government of Morocco. Now this morning so far we've had visits from President Zurabishvili of Georgia, President Anastasiadis of Cyprus, King Ngwanyama Mswati of the Kingdom of Eswatini. We've had a visit from Prime Minister Medvedev of Russia, Chancellor Merkel of Germany, and just a few moments ago the President Macron of France. Now we have a total of over 40 high-level visits from heads of state and heads of government. We'll have more, of course, this afternoon and throughout the conference, and we'll be updating on those visits.
Okay, so that was some of the images that we saw of what happened yesterday and earlier today. During the conference, one of the things that we're going to be doing is we're going to be talking to different delegates that are taking part here in the conference. As you know, we have representatives from governments, workers, and employers organizations. There are over 5,000 delegates attending the conference, and we've asked our reporters to go out and to talk to some of them. The first round that we have is our reporter Marco Minocri. He went and he talked to two employer representatives from US and from Sri Lanka, who gave us their views on the future of work. Let's take a look.
This is Marco reporting for the ILC Daily Show. I'm here with Gabriela Reg-Herzog, Vice President of the U.S. Council for International Business. Welcome to the show, Gabriela.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
So we know that the future of work is at the center of the discussions of this year International Labour Conference. So what are your top priorities when it comes to addressing the challenges of the future of work in the U.S. as an employer?
First of all, one key goal we have is to make sure that in addition to the challenges, that we're all recognizing the opportunities that the future of work brings. And really the future of work is a new opportunity for us as technologies are changing, as job structures are changing, to find ways to make sure that we're preparing our workers, we're preparing our businesses and our economies for those new opportunities. So government plays a key role, and in the United States, our government is very active in terms of job training programs and engaging with business and with labor to try and find joint solutions to prepare our workforce for this new future.
What is your opinion regarding this common narrative about technology taking over human beings?
Well, Technology is always evolving, as it has. We began as agrarian societies, we moved to industrialized, now we're moving into more of a digital age, and again, these are real opportunities, but the key is going to be how are we training and preparing our workforce for the future. In my country, in the United States, we currently have over 7 million job openings that are going unfilled. And the World Economic Forum says that 35% of the skills that maybe just a couple years ago were viewed as essential by 2020 already are going to be obsolete. So how are we working to prepare the workers? This is a key fundamental role, especially for government in terms of education policy, but business wants to be at that table constructively as well as with workers to help decide and shape those policies going forward.
How can employers ensure business models which will be still aligned with a human-centered agenda?
Well, business models are going to change, but the key is how we're working to prepare our own workers and recognizing not just for the new workers and the new skills we're bringing in, but also taking a look at our existing workforces and how together with them can we help them transition and get the new skills that they need in order to be successful in the new roles that we need within business. So, and there's also a role for workers as well as having a mind and a vision of how can we all as individuals be seeking opportunities and advocating for opportunities together for bringing for access to those new training opportunities and skills development.
Answer the question again. Well, we see at the same time we see informality rising across the world. So, what is the role of employers' organization in addressing this issue?
Informality is a challenge. In some countries, the overwhelming percentage of the workforce is in the informal sector. I think first and foremost what employer organizations can be doing there is advocating for the government to develop policies. We need policies that are bringing and seeking to attract workers and bringing them into the formal economy. Because in the formal economy, that's where workers can be protected by labor law and the formal regulatory system, which is a benefit to them, in which the ILO has been working to develop the standards upon which those regulations are based now for 100 years.
Thank you, Gabriela, for being with us. This was Gabriela Herzog from the U.S. Council for International Business, reporting for the ILC Daily Show. This was Marco Minotti. Thank you.
Thank you, Marco, and happy birthday, ILO.
Thank you so much. I'm here with Mr. Kanisha Weerasinga. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
So, sir, you're an employee representative from Sri Lanka, yes, attending the ILC in 2019. So, can you tell me what are your visions and concerns with respect to the most pressing issues around the future of work?
Well, the future of work issues are upon us in Sri Lanka already, because you see a number of jobs being created in relation to the developments of technology, and there are a lot of opportunities that are being created, so there are a lot of positives that we see. On the other hand, technology is bound to affect the traditional types of jobs, and we are likely to see the traditional type of jobs, even in manufacturing, might lose a few jobs because of the improvements in technology and as to how employers perceive that sort of introduction to be. So Sri Lanka is unlike most countries in the region. We are no longer labor intensive. We are not relying on labor too much because of certain reasons. Now we have an aging population, and that's a real concern for us as well.
So you just mentioned how you're foreseeing a loss in jobs given the advances in technology. So as an employer, how are you going to address these new challenges, if you want, in the world of work?
Well, as one of my colleagues put it in the morning as a discussion, skills will be the new currency. So we see skills as being an important portal or via media for the redeployments to take place, as well as for people to find new jobs. So yes, we might see job losses in certain areas, but there are opportunities being created in skills areas. So as long as you have a plan of action where you upgrade the skills of people and you collaborate with the TVET institutions as well as other institutions. You then create a situation where new jobs are created, and those who are aspiring to take up these jobs will also enable to sort of upgrade their skills and move on and integrate into the world of work.
And which one do you think are the main challenges to create these new skills that will be needed in the future?
I think greater collaboration between employers and institutions that are providing services, that will be I won't call it a challenge, but definitely there are some challenges over there, because you need to create institutions, strong institutions, to take this forward. Now, back in Sri Lanka, we are supporting a government's initiative to certify and recognize prior learning on a universal basis. So we hope that by doing that, people will be, their skills will be certified. They'll be certified in terms of the national qualifications framework, and by coordinating and collaborating with the institutions, we hope that business will be able to put in relevant inputs so that the skills that the TVET institutions and various other educational institutes teach will be up to date.
As we see technology advancing and taking over some of the jobs that were traditionally carried out by human beings, at the same time we are experiencing a rise of informality. So how are employers in Sri Lanka trying to address the issue? What do you think is the role of employers to address the issues of a rising informality?
Thank you. Because that's a very important question, because we see it as diverse forms of work rather than informality, because we see people transitioning from the traditional permanent jobs to self-employment opportunities, and this is reality. I mean, you take the gig economy, the platform economies, it's growing all around the world, and certainly in my part of the world as well. So, and people are looking to sort of use their skills and competencies for their own benefit. So you can't stop those things from happening. Of course, these are challenges to traditional employers' organizations, but as long as you have a value proposition, that's why I said we do have a value proposition to offer, because we are getting involved not only on policy levels but at the ground level with regard to the promotion and propagation of skills learning as well as skills certification. So as long as you have services like that on offer, there will be people, even the self-employed, being interested in you and your organ. In the future, social protection flows will have to be established. Otherwise, if there's no balance, there's going to be a lot of issues, not only for employers but for governments, and that's not going to help. So there has to be a balance. Okay. We need to look at social protection flows. As to how we do it is maybe novel, but these are things that we need to innovate and do things. So we are looking at these opportunities as we are keeping a open mind about these.
Thank you for being with us, Mr. Weerasinghe. I'm from the Employers Federation of Sri Lanka. This was Marco Minocri reporting for the ILC Live.
Thank you very much, Marco.
Welcome back to the ILC Daily Show. President Macron from France has just finished addressing the plenary. If you were watching that and you're joining us now live, we're live also from the Palais des Nations in the E-building, the new building. And we're talking a little bit about what's going on here at the conference. We just heard two interviews that our colleague Marco Minocri did with two employer representatives from the US and from Sri Lanka. And now we're going to talk a little bit about the ILO history, about a very interesting book that the ILO has produced on the occasion of its centenary. It's a coffee table book which is called If You Want Peace, Cultivate Justice. And with us is a very important person behind this project, Dorothea Hödker, ILO senior researcher. Welcome, Dorothea, to the show.
Thank you.
I wanted to ask you, first of all, this book tries to put into 120 pages more or less, 100 years of ILO history. How did you manage to do that?
Well, I will briefly show the book before
yes,
we
please.
start.
Yes. That is the book. Yeah. Very nice cover, full of photos actually. Yeah. Maybe we can later show it on the website as well. Yeah, take a few photos and post them on social media. But yeah, tell us, how did you manage to condense 100 years of ILO history into those pages?
Well, it was certainly not a very easy task because we have so much knowledge and research on ILO history. And the first step was really to develop a structure according to guiding questions. And these guiding questions were basically what is essential to know, what were the major turning points in the ILO history, what were the achievements, but also what were the setbacks. And then, based on this, we came up with a structure for the text. But I tried to keep the text as short as possible, because the idea was to have a coffee table book with really many compelling pictures. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that we have. There are a lot of very nice, interesting pictures in the book, and the book, of course, it starts in 1919. That's when the ILO was born. Can you tell us a little bit about the political context of the world in Europe at that time?
Well, it was a very turbulent time because the world, and especially Europe, came out of the First World War. There were millions of people, billions of people had died. There was hunger and misery and lots of social unrest everywhere. And of course, we had the Bolshevik Revolution, which was a model for many of these social uprisings. And in this context, the Labour Commission in Paris came together, and governments really felt that the situation was ripe to fulfill the claims of organized labor and to create an organization really entirely devoted to labor and to the improvement of working conditions.
Yeah, I mean, you've just mentioned a historical background, but this book reflects the ILO's history alongside important moments of human history. How did you select the historical moments to be included in the book? I mean, there's so many, to choose from. What selection criteria did you use?
Well, I think this is not very difficult because I really tried to choose those moments which had a direct and plausible impact on the ILO's work. We have other moments in history, and this morning I was just thinking about the student revolution in '68, which I did not mention in the book because it is not clear if this has had any impact on the ILO. This is an interesting question for historians, but I really try to stick with the major moments, and you find them in the book.
Back now, based on your research and your knowledge and all the work that's gone into the book, what would you say are the 5 most important moments or the key moments of ILO history?
Well, I don't talk about the beginning because this is relatively clear that this is a key moment. Then I would say the Great Depression, because it was the first time that the ILO really started to think about employment creation. And it also it was the beginning of a really close collaboration with the United States under the Roosevelt administration. The next moment was, of course, the Second World War. The ILO had to leave and to go to Canada to survive the war and to continue, at least partially, all its activities. And then the decisive moment here was the Philadelphia Conference in '44. And then the Philadelphia Declaration, which everybody should know in this organization. The next key historical moment is, of course, decolonization. It's a whole period, but there is a peak in the early 1960s, and we have one year, it's 1960, when 15 African states joined the ILO. This has certainly profoundly changed the organization and also the activities. It was the beginning of large-scale technical cooperation. Then there's one more, missing. Yeah. I mean, I would say 2 more. The end of the Cold War, starting with the fall of the Berlin Wall. This meant an acceleration of globalization, which was had already started, but many socialist countries had to undergo a very rough transition to the market economy. And all this together came with high social costs, and the ILO had to reposition itself, and it did so with a decent work agenda. And then I would say, finally, we don't know the impact yet of the 2008 crisis. I mean, the next generation of historians will see much clearer than I can do now what the impact of this crisis has been already.
Okay, I'm checking my phone because we're getting some comments through Twitter. This comes from Rosemary. She says, "Happy birthday, ILO. It is a critical platform and very important to identify moving from an egalitarian society evolved to the Industrial Revolution and now onto the technological future and impact on the workforce, moving the informal economy into the formal sector where laws can protect workers." So that's a very nice message from one of our viewers. One of the things that I wanted to ask you, I'm going to show this book again. I think I'm on that camera, yeah? It's got, like we said, many nice historical pictures. And I imagine choosing the pictures must have been quite a lot of work. How would you go about that?
First thing was to create a team with different people, with younger ones, with older ones, with different backgrounds, because people have different perceptions and different tastes. And what I find important might not be important for somebody else. And this is a book for everybody, so we try to kind of find a compromise. We started to identify pictures we like, which would go along with this more general text. And in the end, we had a few criteria. We wanted as much as possible to have new pictures, because we see there are a few pictures which must be in each publication, and we have them. But there are many more in the archives, and we found very beautiful pictures, especially on technical cooperation. But then we also needed to go to other archives and museums to find pictures to illustrate the more general historical context. And in the end, it was not so easy to remain gender balanced and to achieve some geographical balance as well, because ILO history is not a balanced history. And another problem was a little bit to avoid the group pictures, because many of our historical pictures are these group pictures, and we bring a few in the book, but there are many more, and it was really not so easy to avoid those, because they're a bit boring, I find.
And I know we've been talking about the ILO history, the past, but let's talk about the future a little bit, which is, of course, connected to the present and the past. Does studying the past of the ILO history help identify some trends for the future? I mean, what does the past of the ILO teach us about the future of the ILO?
Well, as a historian, I would say this is a very difficult question. History cannot teach us lessons for the future. The future is really unpredictable. But we can certainly identify long-term trends, and we also see when we look back to history that trends emerge and suddenly end also. Just to give one example where I see a trend right now, this is a declining capacity of nation states to intervene in social and economic policy because of globalization. And this trend started, I would say, in the 1980s. And this is a trend which I don't see any end of this. And it has to do, as I said, with globalization, with transnational production, with transnational communication. And this is weakening the role of the nation state, yes. Mm-hmm.
And one final small question before we leave. Mm-hmm. Where can I get this book if I want a copy?
Well, when you're here in Geneva, you can actually buy a copy at our kiosk in the ILO main building. And for all those who are not here in Geneva, please look at our website. We will provide information. We also have created different language copies in various field offices. So we have it in Chinese, in Russian, in Japanese, and in Portuguese. So we will start to organize this better after the conference.
Great. Thank you very much, Dorotea, for taking the time to be with us.
Thank you.
Salwa?
Yes, 2 months ago, just exactly almost 2 months ago, on April 11th, as part of our centenary celebrations, the ILO organized a global tour, a 24-hour global tour in 24 countries, showcasing the ILO's work throughout, across the globe, through performance, through song, through discussion. And each day during the ILC, we're going to bring you some highlights of this global tour. And today we are looking at the celebrations in Bangkok and Colombo. is a video showing some highlights from our ILO centenary celebrations in Bangkok and Colombo. And this is a quick reminder that you're joining us on the ILC International Labour Conference Daily Show. Please do contribute by social media using the hashtag ILO100. That's for English, and for French and Spanish, OIT100. We're being joined here now by two guests from the ILO. We have Sanjeon Lee, the director of the ILO Employment Department, and Mariluz Vega, coordinator of the ILO Future of Work Initiative. Mariluz, I'm going to start with you. We spoke yesterday to Susan Hayter, another of our colleagues from the ILO, about the origins of the Global Commission report and the ILO's entire initiative on the future of work. Can you tell us first how you were involved?
I started even before Susan, because I was in charge of organizing, in fact, all what is the logistic and all what is the launch of the initiative as such. And starting with the launch of the national dialogues, that was the origin of the report, and we're around 113 national dialogues in all our member states, tripartite dialogues. Then I was called to organize a little bit all this, to bring and to organize the life of the commissioners, if I can say like this, and to try to organize whatever the DG was needing for really running this commission. And was all a quite tough, complicated work, but very, very grateful.
We'll come back for more details in a moment, but now I have a question for Sanjeon Lee. The report of the Global Commission on the Future of Work calls for a human-centered agenda. What does that mean in practice?
I think if you remember for what happens for the last 10 years or so, you can see lots of debate about how technology affects people, how financialization or finance system or globalization affect people, how demographic changes affect people. But we think that's important to discuss, but at the same time, it's very, very important to turn it around. Let's put the people at the center of debate. Let's think about how we can make the people's needs and aspiration and demands, all of this at the center of the economic and social development policies. So I think that approach has been always in the case from the very beginning of this initiative. When we organized big conference on the dialogue or the policy dialogue, the topic of the conference was let's shape the future we want. I think that is the spirit of the Global Commission report. I think that's probably the most progressive and inspiring part of the report.
Sandra, if I can pick up on that. So one of the things that the Commission's report highlights is the importance of lifelong learning.
Yeah.
Why is that so critical for the future of work, especially the future of work we want?
I think when it comes to the future of work, but there is a lot of disagreement about what will happen. But probably one of the very few things most people agree will be that there is there won't be any one or two secure job in your life. So everybody agrees on now there will be more transition, more changes in your job, from school to work and job to job and job back to education school. Everybody agrees on that. So that's probably the best way of empowering the people and get people ready for the future. So I think that's why the people consider this lifelong learning as the critical element for preparing our peoples for the future.
Just a reminder to our viewers, if you want to see the report, if you want to read the report, it's available on our website, ilo.org. You can read the full report, you can read the executive summary, and if you like something a bit shorter, we have a nice info story talking about the different recommendations of the report. Mariluz, one of the things you mentioned just now were the national consultations that fed into the report that informed the discussions of the Global Commission. Were there any, what was the key feedback that you received, that the ILO received through these national consultations?
As you can imagine, so many different countries give a lot of different ideas, but one thing that everyone agrees is the need of working. Everyone wants to work. And it's not only because it's a mean of living, it's also because people realize working. Then working is a need, is a real need, that is going far away from the idea of earning money. Then the most important thing is they want work and they want decent work or work with dignity.
Marie-Luz, we'll continue with you if that's okay right now. The report also recommends a transformative and measurable agenda for gender equality. Now, progress on that has been slow to date. What can we do to speed up the process to transform results?
Well, it is difficult. I say, well, we need these national policies that can really take care of all the aspects of this gender equality, a genuine gender equality. And we need to start at home, taking care of parental leave, in general, also care work, that is one of the issues for the future. Really, we need to improve small things to arrive to have the big things. Besides this, of course, now we are in the discussion of a new convention on harassment and violence that affect in particular women and in particular vulnerable women. But also we need to improve all the agenda with a real clear policies, national policies that can focus the gender equality with the logic elements that should be put in place. It's not something that is achieved. There have been improvements, but a lot needs to be done. And in many, many different spaces, like unpaid work, for example, that affects particular women too.
I have another question for you both, perhaps, but maybe we can start with Sanchon. Another recommendation of the report is that all stakeholders should take responsibility for building a just and equitable future of work. But what choices, what actions do governments, employers, and workers have, or do they need to make to ensure that this becomes a reality?
I think this is a critical question. I believe the Global Commission report provide very, very strong and clear recommendations for governments and social partners. The question is how to translate them into specific policy actions. From government side, we need the governments to be more proactive and in terms of policy development and mobilizing resources, because all the recommendations which actually coming from this Global Commission report requires strong investment. So how can government can mobilize this resource will be an important question. In doing so, of course, we need lots of support from lots of the consultation and coordination with workers and employers. So from their part, I think it's very important to strengthen their actual organizational capacities through especially using some very innovative techniques. So all of this basically points to the importance of the social contract. What is a social contract? It's basically about we agree on some of the common goals and common objectives and common destination. Then we are discussing how to get there and then agree on who's contributing to what and how can we share our responsibilities. That is a very important question and issues I hope all the tripartite partners will pick up after the international level conference.
Since the launch of the global report, which took place here in Geneva on January 22nd, there have been a number of national consultations in different countries, and Sancho was just talking about what countries, what governments can do, what employers and workers' organizations can do to make this report or the recommendations of this report a reality. Can you tell us a little bit of how the ILO constituents at the country level have been taking this report forward and the Future of Work initiative forward?
I said there has been a big welcome, I can say, of the report. I was impressed. I was not expecting as much, thinking that probably reports of the ILO sometimes are sheltered. But it's true that people has been not only reading, but also putting in practice. And not only our tripartite constituent, has been a lot of debate also at the academia level and a lot of involvement, going even to the discussion of some of the new proposals of the recommendation that are new, but also old, because talking about working time or talking about living wages is not new. For ILO, it's 100-year-old. But again, there have been a kind of revitalization of the dialogue around which are the needs of the future of work. And in some way, this is in line with the recommendation of the report on the idea of reinvigorating a social contract, and is what in some way was summarizing what Sanjay was telling. We need to have to rethink on our social contract, to have new elements that we can add to the social contract, in particular considering that the world is changing and we need to adapt to this changing world.
Great. Sandro, Mariluz, Sandro, thank you very much for joining us.
Pleasure.
Just a reminder that you can find this report on the ILO website, ilo.org. And now, Salwa, where do we go?
Yes, now we do have the second of our dispatches from our correspondents around the International Labour Conference. Our colleague Dia Banerjee caught up with government representatives today to discuss what we've been discussing here, a human-centered future of work.
The future of work, I think, and the contribution of the ILO, in my view, should be to look at the kind of occupations or jobs that are being created in the labor market and see how we can be able to assist programs that actually support kind of training or curriculum that actually will be able to synchronize the requirements of the industry to what institutions of learning are actually giving to the children in schools, universities, and any other training institutions. Well, to some extent, with these rapid changes in technology, you realize that there are jobs which are being carried out by human beings, which will be taken upon by machines. But at the same time, let us not forget that the machines and the robots and whatever automation that comes about also requires to be funded, to be sustained, to be maintained, and you will still have a few number of people who train in those specialized areas, whether they are robotics, whether they are machines, automation, and in that process, we find that employment is being created. It could be lost in some places, but at the same time, employment is being created in high-tech occupations. I think we need to carry out a lot of research and observe what is happening in the labor market and ensure that the training programs that we run in our individual countries actually are addressing the requirements of the industry. We need to shift slightly beyond what we have been doing in the past and ask ourselves, where are the jobs being created? If the jobs are being created in areas where we don't have specialized skills, then investments and programs should be mounted in those specific areas so that the students coming out of learning institutions acquire those skills that actually can make them be absorbed into the labor market in the occupations that are being created.
De la declaración del centenario en relación con el futuro del trabajo.
Me parece que tiene que ser una declaración concisa, segura y con muchísimo hincapié en el tripartismo, como lo habíamos mencionado, y en la igualdad de las tres partes, ¿no? Que se tengan en cuenta a las tres partes, a empleadores, trabajadores y sindicatos, para que ésta sea inclusiva y efectiva.
¿Qué pensás en cuanto al sistema tripartito y el futuro del trabajo? ¿Cómo crees que funciona?
Es fundamental, es una de las cosas fundamentales. Cualquiera de las patas que falte del tripartismo no va a garantizar el éxito de la declaración o de cualquiera de las iniciativas del mundo del trabajo.
Welcome back to the ILC Daily Show. That was our colleague Dia Banerjee, who was speaking to some of the government delegates to the ILC. And now we're going to talk about a very important issue regarding the world of work, regarding the future of work, social protection. And with us is Valérie Schmidt, the officer in charge for the ILO Social Protection Department. Welcome, Valérie.
Hello, thank you.
Great to see you. Already in 1919, the ILO Constitution said that, or stated that social protection is key to achieve social justice. And of course, over the past 100 years, a lot of progress has been made. What were some of the key decisions that led to this progress?
Yes, at the international level, there was a number of historical moments that led to the progress towards universal social protection. We are not yet there, but we are progressing. One of them was, I think, in 1948, the Universal Declaration on Human Rights that recognizes social protection as a human right in Article 22 and Article 25. Another one was the adoption by ILO member states of the Convention 102 in 1952 on minimum standards of social security, and this convention really helped to develop national social protection systems in many countries, and already 56 countries have ratified it. Another very important moment was the adoption in 2012 of the ILO's recommendation on social protection floors that paved the way towards universal social protection. And more recently, in 2015, the adoption of the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals, that also recognize the central role of social protection to fight against poverty and reduce inequalities.
I just want to remind our viewers that if you want to know more about social protection, apart from staying with us, you can go to the ILO website and look under social protection. There's a wealth of information there. But Valérie, you were just saying that social protection is a human right. However, still, if I'm not mistaken, some 4 billion people around the world lack social protection. What is the ILO doing to change this reality?
Yes, as you said, Martin, 55% of the world's population is completely excluded from social protection. So what we do is that we work, of course, at country level. We support our constituents in developing their social protection systems, including the social protection floors. And this is done through technical cooperation and through the support that is provided by our specialists, but also we have many experts at country level. And this support is made possible thanks to a huge flagship program that we have developed to really mobilize resources, additional resources for social protection. Second, we develop tools, methodologies on very specific technical aspects so that we can provide more in-depth support, for instance, on the extension of coverage to the informal economy or how to calculate the fiscal space for social protection. Third, we build partnerships because the ILO alone cannot do as much as the ILO would like to do. So we have built a huge partnership with the UN, and actually the recent UN social protection, the recent UN joint fund for the Agenda 2030 has launched a call for proposals on social protection that will help 30 more countries in developing their systems. And last but not least, we support, of course, the ratification of ILO Convention 102 and the promotion of other up-to-date social protection standards.
Universal social protection is key to achieving several of the UN Sustainable Development Goals. And when we speak of universal social protection, what do we mean, and which benefits are included?
When we speak about universal social protection, we mean three things. We mean universal coverage. It means that everybody should have access to the social protection floor that is defined at country level. So the floor includes at least access to healthcare for all and income security across the life cycle. The second thing that we mean is comprehensiveness of the coverage, meaning that you need not only healthcare and old age pensions, you also need child benefits, you need maternity protection, you need unemployment protection. So you need really a comprehensive set of benefits. And finally, we mean adequacy, because the social protection benefits should be at a certain level so that you can have a decent life. So we mean three things, and this is why it's so complicated actually to really develop universal social protection.
Well, you're saying it's very complicated, so is it possible to achieve universal social protection by 2030? How can it be achieved?
So what can be achieved is universal coverage. This is for sure, because many countries, low-income and middle-income countries, have achieved already universal coverage, meaning that they provide at least the social protection floor for all their population. It's the case of China, of Thailand, of Rwanda for health, of Bolivia for old age. We have tons of examples. However, to really further develop comprehensive coverage for all, comprehensive benefits for all, and adequate level of benefits, it will be difficult to achieve these two other dimensions of universal social protection by 2030, but we are there to support ILO's constituents to progress at least.
And building on that, how can the ILO help the ILO constituents to build that political will and to get to that goal?
How we can help? We help through the different elements that I was explaining at the beginning, working at country level, developing partnerships, developing knowledge, and supporting the ratification of ILO conventions. An immediate help that is required is that to expand coverage, because there is a huge coverage gap of 55% of the world's population, you need also to increase the investment in social protection. So you really need to increase the fiscal space, and for that we have a series of tools and very specialized technical assistance on this that can help immediately to really extend universal benefits for all and achieve a universal coverage within a few years. And we are launching a big program with the European Commission on social protection and public finance management that will really focus on expanding the fiscal space for social protection.
I have a question here that came from one of our users on Facebook. His name is Henry or Henri. He says, if universal social protection is possible and has all these benefits, why aren't we there yet? What are the obstacles?
Okay, to respond to Henry, I think the first obstacle is the lack of political will. Many of the governments, leaders, etc., talk about social protection, but when it comes to opening the purse, it's another story. So we need to really transform this political will into a real one, and for that we really need to work, for instance, with the ministries of finance as well, not only talking about our vision, our ambitions, but also implementing it. Then there are also technical and capacity obstacles in some countries that need to be overcome, but the technical aspects are, I would say, easier to overcome than the political ones. But you have countries with a strong political will that have made incredible progress within a few years, and we should look at these countries. Actually, I forgot the publication I wanted to share with the auditors, but we have a publication on 100 years of social protection with tons of country cases that explain that, that show how you can transform a vision into reality.
And if users want to find that publication, where can they go? Where can they find it?
On our website, ILO.org, and the social protection component of it. We have actually a huge platform with tons of technical tools. It's called the www.social-protection.org, where you can find everything.
We have only a short time left, Valerie, but there's a very important issue to bring up before we leave, which is guaranteed social protection from birth until old age is one of the 10 recommendations of the Global Commission of the Future of Work, on the future of work. What is the role of social protection in shaping a future of decent work?
I think social protection will be at the center of the future of work, because the future of work will be, or is already actually, we are already in the future, is marked by a number of transformations. We have challenges like climate change that will require, for instance, a green transition. We have the digital economy that will require also a digital transformation of the society, of the work. We have also tons of migrations. There is the aging issues. There are a number of challenges that can only be overcome if we establish strong and universal social protection systems. Just to give you an example, if we want to facilitate just transition towards green economies, we will need to have social protection to support the workers during this transition when they lose their job and they need skills development, retraining, job placement to go to the next job, which will be green. So for all these issues, we will need social protection to facilitate the transition. And for us, it's both exciting, but at the same time, it's a challenge because we will have to support ILO member states in adapting their social protection systems so that they can really play this central role.
There's so much more we could say about this subject, but for now, Valerie Schmidt, officer in charge of the ILO Social Protection Department, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you for giving us this opportunity. Yeah.
Now, during the ILC, every day we're going to bringing you some stories of impact of the ILO around the world. And our first feature today looks at the aftermath of the tragedy of the Rana Plaza building collapse in Bangladesh in 2013. And it looks at the ILO work that has been done to ensure that worker employment insurance becomes a reality for all in the country.
RMGs. The odds are over 3 to 1 you're wearing some right now. The odds are also high that your ready-made garments were manufactured in a country where workers get no compensation if they're injured at work. After the disaster, the world came to face another harsh reality. When Rana Plaza collapsed, no insurance arrangement was in place to pay the victims compensation. In the end, some emergency money did come, fortunately, but not nearly enough. Much more needed to be done. With the ILO playing a central role, government officials met with garment industry representatives, both local and international, and with trade unions and NGOs. In line with ILO Convention 121 on employment injury benefits, the Rana Plaza compensation arrangement was born in late 2013. Somehow, around $30 million had to be raised. 2 years on, it's become clear just how difficult it is to obtain such an amount after an industrial accident. Today, only 34% of the global workforce is protected by mandatory social insurance for accidents on the job. ILO Deputy Director General Sandra Pulaski mentioned recently that the estimated global death toll from occupational accidents and work-related diseases is 6,300 people a day. Most accidents occur in low-income countries and have a huge impact on already vulnerable families, often living in extreme hardship. A work accident turns people's lives upside down, not only for the actual victims, but also for those who depend on their incomes. On top of this, the cost of work accidents to the world economy amounts to $2.8 trillion a year. This simply cannot go on. It's high time every country in the world started upholding workers' rights to employment injury insurance. Deputy Director General Gilbert Hongbo insisted on this at the first anniversary of the Rana Plaza disaster, because the fact remains that no matter how careful we are, accidents can and do happen. The ILO has been central in bringing about change. OECD countries, international buyers and trade unions have put EII coverage on their agendas. Multinationals and buyers fear for their reputation if found selling goods made by workers at risk. Consumers are also increasingly keen on wearing ethical clothes. All this is a start, but the push needs to continue until every worker has the social security they're entitled to. It is each government's responsibility, together with employers and workers, to turn this into a reality. Experience in other countries shows that if all employers chip in just 1% or so of total wages toward a national insurance fund, they should get peace of mind. If an accident does happen, EII will take care of all medical needs and rehabilitation. Victims will get compensation, and the company, no matter how big or small, will avoid possible legal action or bankruptcy. What's more, worker productivity, investor confidence, and labor relations will all improve. Rana Plaza left a legacy. It is our duty to make sure it's not just one of horror, but also one of honor. Every worker out there has a fundamental right to social protection at work. Let's give it to them.
Welcome back. That was a video showing the work that the ILO has been doing in Bangladesh following the collapse of the Rana Plaza building in 2012. If you're joining us now, we're live from the Palais de Nación, the ILC Daily Show. We're in the lunch break now at the ILC. We're waiting for the plenary to start again in about 20 minutes, 30 or half an hour. Before we go to the plenary, we want to show you a video of a colleague of ours who works in the Madrid office, Judith Carreras. Every year we have some colleagues who join us from the field to come and support the work that we do here in Geneva. Judith came from Madrid this year, and before she came, she put together a nice little video showing her preparations for the ILC. Let's take a look.
Hola, hello, welcome to the ILO Madrid office. Here I am with my colleagues, very busy in these days previous to the International Labour Conference. In the next video, you'll see how a delegation, in this case the Spanish one, is getting ready to participate in this very special year of the ILC 2019, the year of the centenary. Spain was one of the 40 countries that took part in 1919 in Washington in the first conference. 100 years after, you'll see their commitment and enthusiasm with the organization remains intact. Please have a seat and enjoy the video. And by the way, I just hope that the weather in Geneva it will be almost as good as the one we have here in Madrid. Gracias.
No solo celebramos 100 años de la institución, que ya de por sí sería un motivo de gran satisfacción para todos, sino que además somos conscientes de la importancia de esta conferencia. Todos estamos convencidos de que nos encontramos en una suerte de punto de inflexión en el que quizá las reglas y el mundo del trabajo que hemos construido hasta ahora está cambiando, se está transformando y serán necesarias nuevas reglas para construir un nuevo contrato social. Esperamos de este centenario que se pongan las bases para que ese nuevo contrato social nos permita garantizar un futuro del trabajo con trabajo decente y trabajo justo y solidario para los próximos 100 años.
Es un año de celebraciones, el centenario. Para nosotros es importante, la OIT es muy importante y como decía, estamos pues muy implicados. La conferencia además aborda un tema que es de una importancia máxima en la actualidad, a la velocidad que se están produciendo los cambios en este momento y cómo eso afecta al futuro del trabajo. Creo que es un asunto de máxima actualidad de cuyos resultados la verdad esperamos mucho. Así que nos pilláis en las últimas sesiones ya de preparación de la conferencia con parte del equipo que nos vamos a desplazar. Nos desplazamos prácticamente 10 personas encabezados por el presidente de COE, con lo cual con eso yo creo que ya os podemos decir que implicación máxima y también ilusión máxima.
Llevamos varios años trabajando. Desde el 2016 la OIT arrancó una iniciativa muy positiva, constituimos la Comisión Tripartita Nacional, se han organizado distintas conferencias nacionales tripartitas que nos han permitido debatir la cuestión en profundidad entre los gobiernos, los representantes de los trabajadores, nosotros como representantes de las organizaciones empresariales. Es una iniciativa que además se ha replicado en los ámbitos regionales, lo cual nos ha permitido extender en los distintos territorios este debate en profundidad, incluso en el mundo académico, porque también se han organizado congresos con las universidades que sin duda han tenido una aportación de gran valor. El resultado ha sido que de cada uno de estos actos se han elaborado documentos que han permitido recoger la visión de cada una de las partes y aportar a este gran debate, ¿no? Que ahora en Ginebra y con ocasión del centenario en este mes de junio pues podremos incluso ampliar al ámbito internacional, ¿no? Y poder debatir entre todos esta cuestión que es de vital importancia, ¿no? Del futuro del trabajo que queremos.
camino al aeropuerto. Muy un poco justo.
Una de las organizaciones internacionales y además tripartita más importante y más antiguas del mundo, la OIT, cumple 100 años. UGT estuvo presente en la fundación de la OIT y sigue presente 100 años después en una organización que comparte con la nuestra los valores de la defensa de la paz y la democracia a través de la mejora de vida de los trabajadores y de las trabajadoras. Pero seguramente esta sea la parte más anecdótica, sin serlo. La parte más importante es que el futuro del trabajo es el futuro de la sociedad y la descapitalización del trabajo es la descapitalización de la sociedad, y en ese sentido el gran tema de la conferencia, el futuro del trabajo que queremos, hace imprescindible que la organización se vuelque tanto en la conferencia de este año como en la propia OIT. Esperamos cosas muy positivas de ella. Pero también vamos a reclamar que el resultado de la conferencia sea lo más fuerte posible, en el sentido que esperamos realmente un documento normativo o documentos normativos en varios ámbitos. Dentro del tema de violencia en el trabajo, que tengamos un documento normativo de carácter vinculante y fuerte que no desvirtúe el origen o el porqué de esta importante materia, y dentro del documento sobre el futuro del trabajo, la reflexión profunda a la que invitaba el director general al hacerlo, la reflexión profunda de las tres partes que componen la OIT, que en nuestro aporte individual realmente podamos y tengamos el valor no solo de elaborar un documento, sino el valor de implantar después un documento que sirva de guía para todas las sociedades democráticas en el planeta en el que estamos.
De seguridad situadas en el bolsillo delante de su asiento.
That was a video that our colleague Judith Carreras put together on her preparations and on her journey to the International Labour Conference. Now, just before the conference began, we heard from the ILO Director of Research, Damien Grimshaw. Our colleague Adam Bowers caught up with him and spoke with him about the key trends and signs for the future of the labour market.
The future of work is a key issue on the agenda of this year's centenary conference, the ILC. I'm here with Damien Grimshaw, the director of the research department, to talk a little bit more about the future of work and particularly the data behind the future of work. Damien, welcome. Just a quick question, first of all. We're talking about the future of work at the centenary conference this year. Can you give us an idea of some of the trends that we're already seeing that are pointing towards the direction we're heading?
Well, so some of the trends are related to some of the big disruptive forces. We're all talking about new technologies. So we're very aware of the different studies pointing to potential displacement effects of robots, automation, artificial intelligence. We're especially concerned with the effects on rebundling of tasks within jobs, and that's a major area of inquiry. We're looking at climate change. So this is all the aspects associated with environmental degradation. But it's also to do with how we invest in the green economy, ecosystem services. And we know that if the whole world gets together and invests, we'll have a net creation, actually, of millions of jobs. We're also worried about aging. That's not all regions. Africa has more youth and rising population, but many regions actually have aging. And this involves policy interventions in many areas, in social protection, in the care economy, in adapting workplaces with new technologies and so on. Globalization is another huge disruptive force, and here the world's different regions are shifting in balance. We're seeing ongoing issues around global value chains, but also new, very interesting areas of trade with social clause agreements, which Europe is spearheading, but many other regions are also very interested. So lots and lots of disruptive forces, changing the future of work, but also legacy effects that we're also interested in.
Thank you. You covered a lot of ground in your first answer there. Maybe if we can step back a bit and pick that apart a little bit. Perhaps if we take employment levels first of all. I mean, where are we now? And what are we looking at in terms of future jobs? And are there big disparities between different regions in terms of the current situation and where jobs will be coming from in the future?
Yes, so we look at various aspects of job growth, employment growth. So we're as interested in growth in, if you like, the formal economy, employment, as well as self-employment, as well as areas of informal employment. So we have quite a wide-ranging concern. We're also concerned with unemployment, which has been coming down in recent years, but it's still at very high levels, and it's unevenly distributed around the world. So we're also interested in this sort of imbalance of job growth and the risk of unemployment around the world. But if we just go back to informal employment, we still haven't really cracked this. So at the ILO, we have a very strong policy to formalize informal employment wherever we can. And we're very concerned that there's still 2 billion workers in informal employment. It's about 61% of the global workforce. And that's a big area of concern and also research.
Okay. And when we talk about levels of employment and we talk about informal work, it's a huge number you talked about just then, are we looking particularly at the quality of jobs, not only in the informal sector but also in the formal sector? Is quality of job, of work a real issue?
Well, this is perhaps one of the issues for the ILO since we started with the Decent Work program back in the late 90s. And we use that as an area to organize operations around the world in our field offices. We also use it to plan research and policy guidance, conventions and so on. So we think about decent work in 4 different areas: social protection, so how many are covered by social protection and what's the standard and level and quality of social protection. So again, most workers don't have any of the different social protections, around 51% don't have any. We're also concerned about social dialogue. That's another measure of quality of work, because whether or not you have the right to voice your concerns through a collective organization, typically a trade union, that also matters to us. We're worried about labor rights. So that covers us fundamental rights and principles at work. So, whether you've got rights to minimum wage, a right to working time regulations and so on. And finally, we're worried about access to full and productive employment. So the overall macroeconomic policy and whether we've got the right level of aggregate demand to fuel full employment and productive employment is also very, very critical for us. So it's quite a wide-ranging answer, I know, but I think at the ILO we have a very eclectic, multidimensional view of quality of work, which is important.
I know you mentioned decent work, and of course in 2015 the international community came together to decide some wide-ranging 17 international development goals, sustainable development goals, one of which covered decent work, and we've got some ambitious targets set on decent work. We're now almost sort of 10 years away from the deadline of 2030. Are we making progress?
Well, in some respects, yes, and in others, unfortunately, not. But of course, there's still time for innovative interventions. So we're currently drafting the SDG 8 report, which we'll be presenting in New York at the High Level Policy Forum in July, so after the conference. And we're there trying to be positive and provide an uplifting message that there's still a lot we can do. But we have to be realistic and show that we haven't made sufficient progress. So just take the area of child labour, for example. It's come down enormously in recent years. It's down to around 152 million child labour. But if we carry on, if we project forward the trajectory that we have been following the last 5 years, we're not going to eradicate child labour by 2030, which is the target. You could take another target like NEET, the young people not in education, employment training, so that's young people 15 to 24. And again, the target calls for a significant reduction, and we haven't seen a significant reduction yet. But again, we know what can be done, and so that's the message we want to make in this report.
I know you mentioned young people, of course, there in your answer. This is the cohort that's going to be affected most by the changes you described in your first answer, those big impacts, those transformations on the world of work. What is being done now, and what are the kind of policy choices that need to be made to ensure that the opportunities are there for young people? Not only the opportunities, but they're actually prepared to take those opportunities at the same time.
So I think it's very important that we focus on policies, because at the ILO, we don't think that labour markets left alone come up with the best solutions. We know from vast experience the labour markets need to be regulated effectively. So the Global Commission report on the future of work singles out young people in part of its report and recommends a set of policies. So it says to finance quality apprenticeships, for example, because we know that if young people are leaving school or college and testing the labour market, that's where they face a huge risk of unemployment. And any year spent unemployed as a young person creates then a scarring effect, is what we call it in the research jargon, where you're going to face lower earnings opportunities in future years. So tackling that transition so that young people are able to be channeled through into secure and decent work is really, really critical. And this problem of the NEETs, the so-called NEETs, which is one of the SDG 8 measures, is especially a problem for young women. Far more so than young men. So if you go to the Arab states, you go to northern sub-Saharan Africa, and you go to parts of southern Asia, you'll see very, very, very high shares of young women not in education, not in employment, not in training. It's a real problem which can be addressed and should be addressed.
Okay. And this issue of gender inequality in the labour market, I mean, this is a pervasive problem right now as well. And again, is a question of policy choice? We see in all of the issues we've described that there seems to be at the end, it's a policy choice. We need to make a choice to do it in a certain direction. Is that the same for gender equality right now?
It is. Gender equality is a very important dimension of inequality for a number of reasons. And we've called for transformative action in a recent report on the future of women at work. So one of the things that's called for is greater action that addresses the sort of interplay between equality in the home and the private sphere, if you like, and inequality in employment. So you can't tackle one without tackling the other. So one obvious way forward is to have much stronger investment in family policy schemes. So whether that's childcare, accessible and affordable, or whether it's shared leave schemes, again, at an affordable basis. It's no good saying to fathers, there's your chance to take a couple of weeks if it's not paid at some level, either mutually with employers or through some other form of insurance system. So that's very important. And then the Global Commission report had a number of recommendations, in fact, for gender equality. It also focused on workplace measures. It called for more transparent pay practices. It also called for affirmative action measures on recruitment, on promotion, decisions within the workplace. So there's a number of remedies here that can be taken. Again, so we know from evidence across the world where gender pay gaps are high here and low here. That's really a result of different policy choices, as you say. Yeah.
And the broader problem of income inequality and poverty, working poverty around the world, again, it's maybe a question of policy choice, but we've seen in recent years, again, the results of inequality, perhaps poverty, people looking for easy answers, perhaps when they're going to the ballot box, seeing a rise in sort of populist answers to real problems. Again, with the future work in mind, are we heading in the right direction here? Are we looking at the policy choices which could address sort of income inequality and poverty?
I mean, I think for me this is the number one question. So we need to think about the future of work through the lens of how to reduce inequalities. Now, from a research perspective, we're very concerned and interested in the different measures of inequality. There's a lot of concern now that the old-fashioned Gini coefficient isn't capturing the different changes we're seeing at the very bottom and the top of income and wage distributions. So there's a lot of work by the Paris School, Piketty, Alvarado and others in New York and other schools around the world. So we're linking up with these different ways of thinking about inequality. And the ILO can say a lot in terms of gender measures of inequality, wealth measures. We've got a new index on the labour share, so we can think now about how the labour distribution that goes to self-employed as well as wages is distributed. And we're seeing quite large inequality measures there with this new data. And that's very important. So we need to think not only about the size of the pie, if you like, but how it's distributed. And there are real questions, and the 2030 agenda for the UN for the sustainable development is really questioning our notion about economic growth and how you share the given prosperity. So many of the regions in the world need really huge boosts to their growth. Other regions need to think far more carefully about sustainability and inclusivity.
Thank you. And we're looking at the new economy, the changes in the world of work, the new employment relationships. We're seeing the growth in the sector of platform economy, perhaps gig economy. So platforms online, dishing out work to people around the world or in different geographical zones. Is the labour market, is the world of work set up yet to deal with this? Are the institutions in place, are the regulations in place to ensure that workers in this new economy are protected, do have a decent living wage, and have the decent work that we're talking about in the 2030 agenda?
Well, I think the near consensus that I'm hearing after talking with platform companies themselves, trade unions, as well as new groupings of workers, is that the short answer is no. We don't have the effective institutions in place to deal with this, both the new business model as well as the new working relationships. So, as everybody will know, there's lots of legal test cases about whether platform companies, partners or customers or drivers, etc., are workers or employees or self-employed. So the institutional framework around which the labour markets are currently working is lagging behind, you might say. There's also some sort of old-fashioned practices there, like piece rate pay and pretty tough forms of performance management, which we don't see in the new tech, creative economy. But it's combined with very new algorithmic management and other issues and data ownership and so on, which need addressing. So it's a real challenge for an organization like the ILO to think outside of the box of its standard employment relationship and say, well, how can we ensure that these standards equally apply to the self-employed, for example, in these new economies. But it involves a real test of understanding of the new business model and a test of the challenges that these businesses, both the clients which use the platforms and the platforms themselves, what's the enabling environment also for those businesses, because they are also creating jobs in many parts of the world where those things are lacking.
Sure. And over the last 2 years, the Global Commission on the Future of Work has been discussing and deliberating on exactly these issues that we've been talking about. And earlier this year, they came up with a report, the Global Commission on the Future of Work, with 10 key recommendations. At the heart of it was a human-centered approach to the world of work. And it's something that's being considered now as part of the ILC between governments, workers and employers, with a hopeful declaration at the end of the ILC on the future of work. This human-centered approach, let me ask you this way: do you see humans as the centre of the future of work? Is the future of work human?
Yes. Well, I think maybe I'm not so obsessed by the sort of robotization of the planet as other people might be. Some of my colleagues are a little bit more along that continuum. I think it is human-centered. I think the report undertook a careful analysis, and it embraces a nice philosophical understanding, I think, which talks about human capabilities, institutional capabilities, and also active areas for financial investment. And I think bringing those three sort of pillars together paves the way towards a more sustainable and human-centered future. So if you just take one very small example, when we see collaborative robots, cobots, working with, for example, doctors or with care workers, if those workers can negotiate the change in their bundles of tasks, that's human-centered. And that's how those jobs will continue to be decent and fulfilling and give meaning to people's lives. Without that discussion and dialogue, which is at the heart of any social contract within a firm or within the country, yes, we are sort of holding our hands up and saying, well, sorry, we failed everybody. So I think we have the answers, and the spirit of the declaration, I think, is that, very much so, yeah.
Okay, thank you. And often, just to close, we hear the Director General of the ILO speak about the fact that the future is not yet written. It's for us to write. Do you share that view that, it's really the choices we're making now, and those choices can lead us down the road to a human-centered future of work?
Absolutely. Again, I think that's a philosophy that many of us share within the ILO, that the future isn't predetermined. It's not technologically determined or determined by, demographic change and so on. Politics, dialogue, reshifting social contracts, these are the things that shape history. So I think any reading of the last century gives you optimism, I think, for the next 100 years. Sure, there are many, many legacy problems that have not been addressed and still need to be addressed. But I think the philosophy at the heart of both the Global Commission report as well as this Centennial Declaration, as I've seen it today, are the right ones in addressing a future for a human-centered development.
Damien Grimshaw, thank you very much.
Good, thanks. Thank you. Thanks.
That was our colleague Adam Bowers speaking to the director of the ILO Research Department, Damien Grimshaw. The plenary is about to begin. The first one up is the president of Madagascar. But before we do that, we want to bring you one more video. It's another one of our projects in the field. This is a project that we have in Myanmar. It's about making ginger farmers and ginger farming more productive and safer.
Uli chen sai ha cheni kyo da yo. Dini si ma ko no ni mi uli chang wa we da.
Si con thì nó cái bị thằng ấy già nấu này si con mà chuyên sinh dễ hơn. Nhá chưa là chắc phải bì rồi là chắc phải thì chắc là phải là tiêu. Làm gì? Nào vậy à? Bữa đi phải đi xem anh nè. Ai thằng mà đủ lâu nó khai rồi nè đấy. Chỉ đi lâu rồi nào.
Chen sai mi so le da tu ben ju mi so ali ma so ma ne le win da le khai di ji he lue he da le do kha yaw la we.
Anh cho lấy phụ vậy à? Nị bù le khám ta già nhưng mà nị bù về mua rồi le chi phụ tu vậy à? Để cho nó mua nị bù già khám mua vậy đấy.
Mi phải ya lo yen lo de ni kong we lo ya da de ni kong lo le da lo ni bu pen lo na le ba le do le.
Như ta chả đấy. Si pha bông theo si thế về gì tiền thế về cho bố về nó lên phao này chứ. Cả người đấy mới bảo. Anh nói bang khi này đi ra bang khi này phao chẳng này ở ra phao mấy giờ.
Bố ta si tông chẳng là long an khoan mà so anh thì mi ai cha yong này.
Tông này là cả người tông nhà rồi. Anh thì mi ai là sao?
And now we are ready to start bringing some of these concepts and this knowledge to the communities. The training this week had two main components. One is occupational safety and health. So we explain why occupational safety and health is important, what are the elements that we look at when we talk about occupational safety and health. Several topics, ergonomics, agrochemicals, extreme weather conditions, management of pests and organization of the farm, tool safety. All these elements are discussed at the community level by men and women, and they bring together solutions to priority issues that they find are actually relevant for them, that can enhance their livelihoods and the way they produce and farm ginger. The second component was on Global GAP, good agricultural practices. The Global GAP certification deals with critical control points around worker safety and welfare, food safety, environmental impact of farming activities, and animal welfare. So it very much rewards responsible production processes in the farming sector.
အရင်ကလှုပ်ထုံးတဲ့လှုပ်တဲ့ပုံစံပေါ့နော်ဒီတတိမထားပြီးဘူးတော့လှုပ်ခဲ့တော့ပေါ့အခုဆိုတင်တန်းတက်ပြီးတဲ့အချိန်ကျတော့ဘယ်လိုဆိုရင်ဒီကိုယ်နဲ့အန်တယ်ဖြစ်မဲ့ဟာကိုဆိုတော့ကိုကတော့ခါကွယ်ရတော့မှာပေါ့ဘယ်လိုထားဖို့ထားနည်းစနစ်မှာပေါ့နော်အဲ့ဒါကိုလည်းတတိထားမိလာပါတယ်
As a result of this training, farmers will be able to identify occupational safety and health issues that are relevant for them and for their communities, and to identify how to solve them, what context-appropriate solutions they can find as a community.
ကိုယ့်ရဲ့ညီကိုမောင်နှမတွေပေါ့နော်သူတို့လည်းအဖွဲ့ပြီးတော့ဒီလုံပုံလုံနည်းစနစ်ပေါ့ channel မှာကွင်းဆင်းပြီးတော့သူတို့တွေလည်းဘယ်လိုလုပ်တင်တယ်ဘယ်လိုဖြစ်တင်တယ်ဆိုတော့ပြပေးဖို့ပေါ့သူတို့အတွက်ဒီစီးနဲ့ပတ်သက်တဲ့ဟာပေါ့နော်စီးရဘယ်လိုကြိမ်တွေရမယ်ဘယ်လိုအသုံးပြအောင်လဲဆိုရင်တော့သူတို့အတွက်တော့အများကြီးအကျိုးရှိပါလို့
The second benefit for farmers is to understand that there is a huge opportunity for their efforts on improving occupational safety and health to be rewarded with better prices and access to more and better markets.
တင်တန်းတက်ပြီးတဲ့အချိန်ပေါ့နော်ကိုကလုံခြုံစိတ်ချနေတယ်ကိုလည်းယုံကြည်ပါတယ်
Organic ရမှသာလင်ဒါထားမြော်ပဲစီကွယ်ကောင်းကောင်းမြင်လာမှာစားတာ Organic ပုံစံမျိုးဦးလေးလာမြင်အနာကောက်ဦးလေးယူထားတယ်
ငါတို့ကောထဲတယ်ဒီလေတော့ဂျင်ညာတောင်းတော့ထားပြမယ်ဆရာကျောင်းတော့ထားပြမယ်ဂျင်ညာတာဖြစ်အဲ့ဒါကိုဒါတဲ့ကောင်ကကျွစားကြည့်ပါစေဒီမျိုး
The
That was the second and the last of today's feature stories on aspects of the ILO's work in Myanmar about how to make ginger farming safer and more productive. And there'll be lots more of these stories coming up during the course of the daily shows at the International Labour Conference. Martin?
Thank you, Salwa. Indeed, we're coming to the end of the second edition of the ILC Daily Show. Tomorrow we'll be back at the same time, around 1 p.m. Geneva time. We're waiting for the plenary to begin, which it should happen very shortly. All you need to do if you want to follow the plenary is switch channels. The first one up is the President of Madagascar. We have 8 speakers this afternoon. The last one will be the British Prime Minister Theresa May. And tomorrow, like Salwa was saying, we'll be back with the Daily Show. We're going to be talking about other issues related to the ILO centenary. We're more specifically about 100 years of international labor standards and about the campaign that the ILO has to promote the ratification of conventions. Tomorrow, it's also World Day Against Child Labor, and we're going to have an interview with Beata Andres, the head of our fundamentals branch, to talk about child labor, and we'll carry on talking about child labor the following day as well. But for now, that's all. Please keep on watching the plenary if you can. If you want to follow us on Twitter, our hashtag is ILO100 or OIT100 in French and Spanish. That's all for now. Thank you very much for joining, and see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.